Welcome to Every Child Belongs. I'm Kim Botto, an adoptive mom, grandma, an advocate for kids and teens with disabilities, as well as a longtime leader of kids in student ministries. In this show, we explore how we can create spaces where every child feels heard and valued, whether neurodivergent, differently abled, or they've experienced trauma. Every child belongs. We'll hear from educators, parents, professionals, and more, finding practical ideas that help build a compassionate and supportive world for every child. Let's get started. I am so happy to have Dr. Chinwé Williams with us today. We have traveled in the same circles for years. This is the first time we've actually had a face-to-face, even though it's virtual convo. So I'm so happy to have you. Chinwé is a board-certified therapist. She is a clinician. She is speaking all the time. She's also an author. I read your book, Seen, that was released, a couple years ago.
Yeah, 2020.
Then you have a brand new book, Calm, Courageous, and Connected. I have it right here with me, all marked up. A Parent's Guide to Raising Emotionally Resilient Kids, which I highly recommend for not only parents, but for ministry leaders. Chinwé is also a mama of 3 kids, a wife of 1 husband. And you said that you're a Georgia Bulldog fan. I'm a University of Kentucky fan. And, us SEC fans stick together. So when Georgia isn't playing UK, I do root for Georgia.
Oh, well, that is very exciting for me, Kim. And my husband, by the way, grew up a Kentucky fan. So there we go.
Nice. There's a lot of very passionate Kentucky fans. But Chinwé, what did I leave out? What else would you like people to know about you?
Oh, gosh. I think you covered it. The highlights, right? We say this all the time, but it really is true. I get to do a lot of cool things in my career. I've taught for, my goodness, 12 to, 15 years. I've been a therapist for 18 years. I do get to travel thanks to the book. I get to hang out with ministry leaders, corporate folks, but my first and, really primary, most important ministry is being a mom, a wife, a sister, and all of that. I know that sounds really boring and cheesy.
No, it's not.
But that's it. So I've got 3 kiddos. This doesn't necessarily qualify me to talk to families, but it does lend to some, credibility. I've got 3 kiddos across the age and developmental spectrum. My oldest is 21. She is a college student, studying computer animation,
Wow.
and she is just amazing, really thoughtful. She's artistic, and she's also given me permission to share stories about just her battle with anxiety. So that's 21. And then I have a 14-year-old who has been diagnosed with autism. He's amazing, and he's a teenager. So everybody pray for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's summer, so I'm running out of food quickly in the pantry and in the fridge.
Yep.
He's tall and handsome. And then I have a 10-year-old Kim, who is neurotypical and funny and principled and at times stubborn and is gifted in math and loves basketball. So I am having a whole lot of fun, and it's great to be able to kind of connect with families about just the different challenges that most families are experiencing right now. So I think that's pretty much it.
And would you say, it seems to me from following you, hearing you speak over the years, you're especially passionate about helping families, churches, organizations connect with kids who would be described as not typical. Is that accurate?
Very accurate. Very accurate.
Okay. So why? Where did that come from?
Gosh, it probably started really young. So, Kim, I grew up within a family of immigrants. My father came to this country from Nigeria. He was actually solicited. He was brought to this country to study and to teach French, of all languages.
Wow.
Yeah, he was very adept at that. My mom and my brother and I followed him. So I think just that experience, right? The immigrant experience of feeling just a little bit like an outsider. I had a weird name. My family had a different culture. But what was interesting is, I think because of my temperament and my personality, I think back to this and I'm like, this is really odd. I was really popular, especially in middle school when everybody was really awkward and just hated life, right? But the reason why I think I was fairly popular was because I was super shy. I was really observant. I was taking in group dynamics, individual dynamics, who's getting along with who's not, what's happening, but I would never say a word, right? So the popular kids would like open up to me, and the not so popular kids would open up to me, and I would just kind of hold it all in. And so I think that combination of really hearing people's stories and knowing that what is presented on the outside, right? What we see forward facing doesn't always align with just the struggles that people have. And especially the kids who were not very typical. Gosh, like I feel like I related to them more, right? I felt awkward in my skin. I didn't always feel like I had the right words. Oftentimes I had no words. I was super shy,
Mm-hmm.
but very much a listener, and I had a huge empathy piece to me. And I think just that combination of not feeling totally like I truly belonged all the time, and being observant and a good listener and having that compassion and empathy, I really began to appreciate just everybody's unique perspective, right? And so that boded well for what I eventually ended up doing,
No
which is
kidding.
which is a therapist. And then a school counselor. I worked in the schools initially. And then as God would see fit, Kim, personally, this whole empathy and compassion thing that he was growing inside of me really showed up in 2014 when my first son, Braden, who is my biological son, was diagnosed with autism at 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Well, what's interesting about that is I was teaching at the time, I was teaching human growth and development. Again, God had all of this planned out and figured out. I would hang out in those chapters that really talked about kids that had developmental disabilities, what parents were going through, what teachers needed to know, how counselors, because I was teaching graduate counseling students, what they needed to know, what skills they needed to have to walk alongside not only the individuals, but the families. And I remember being super passionate about this. I had 0 kids of my own. I was a young teacher, and I was like, "Lord, where is this coming from?" Like, and sometimes the students would say, "Do you have a child with, some sort of special need?" And I'd say, "No, I actually don't have any biological kids myself." Um, and I had actually had Jalen, but I hadn't had my own kids biologically yet. And so I was like, Lord, where is this passion coming from? So even with that background and knowledge, and even training, and I'm training others on this topic, Kim, it hit me hard. It was overwhelming.
Yeah.
He wasn't diagnosed until he was 3. So when he was born, we brought him home from the hospital. He was typically developing, in fact, considered advanced pretty quickly. He was that kid, Kim, and I don't get this personal on a lot of podcasts, but he was that kid that the daycare leaders and workers and the ministry leaders would be like sneaking their phone numbers to me and saying, I'm
Oh,
available to babysit on the
yes.
weekend. He was that
Yes.
kid. And then everything changed. He became nonverbal. He was not reaching those milestones developmentally. And he became actually physically aggressive. He would turn over tables, he would scratch, he would swipe. And so it went from, can we babysit? Can we babysit? To, oh my gosh, talking to my husband, how are we going to find a new school for him? What are we going to do? How are we going to navigate this? So, kind of back to your question, all of this like full circle, right? Like,
Right.
I had that passion for working with individuals who were a little bit different or didn't feel like they belonged. I had the experience myself. Um, just as a kid, a middle schooler, and then as a parent, just really fully understanding what that journey was like. And it's different for every family. You mentioned Scene, our first book. Will Hutcherson is a youth pastor.
Right.
Kim, do you know youth? Do you know youth? Do you know youth? Do you know Will?
I know of Will. I do not know him personally.
Yeah, so he's my co-author. We wrote this book. It really took off. During the pandemic, we traveled everywhere. We spoke to parents, teachers, leaders, and God really impressed it upon my heart to speak more personally than I ever had about my journey. And it was just kind of everything exploded. I saw after each seminar, parents and leaders would ask questions not about the typical kids, not about general anxiety. Oftentimes they did. Like, how do you handle panic attacks? What are the signs? How do you know it's time to get help? But a lot of the really, poignant questions were related to kids who were on the spectrum, kids who had some sort of neurodiversity, kids who were not developing typically, and that just really that spoke to me. That spoke to me. The exhaustion that parents and families feel sometimes. Let's be real, the depression,
Right.
the burnout, all of those things, and the joy, of course. But especially in the very beginning stages. And if you have a child that's struggling with aggression, that's struggling to make friends, that can be really taxing for families.
Absolutely. Because when we imagine having kids, we imagine the typical. And so when it's not typical, there is an adjustment period. So that's why I'm so thankful for you and the work that you do, because people do want to get better. And we're learning that there are different ways that we can connect with kids like that. So I have read your book and I've highlighted a bunch of it. And I have all kinds of things. And I'm just going, amen. Yes, yes, to so many things. So there's a couple things that I want to talk about from your book. And one is you talk about questions that you frequently get. These are questions I get too. And two of them are, when does my child's behavior require a hard boundary or a softer touch? And is my child really having a difficult time, or are they just being disobedient and lazy? So what's the answer?
Yeah, the answer is it depends, right? That's always the answer. It's always the answer.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I always want to share with families that you want to really understand if you have a typically developing child or a neurodivergent child, you want to kind of understand what is to be expected, what is developmentally appropriate, what is to be expected at this phase. In general, remember that's kind of when I was like super passionate about this topic. I was teaching human growth and development and child development. So having that information is really important, but also knowing your kid. So I think it's important to remember that anger, no matter who your kid is or what their special need is normal. It is a normal part of development. It is to be expected. Behavior is really language, right? It's language for both neurotypical kids and for kids who are neurodivergent. When a child is having some sort of emotional distress, be it frustration, anger, anxiety, they can respond in a number of ways. Some kids, you won't even see it on the outside, right? They're experiencing so much, but it's like a volcano, right? For a long time, it's just sort of building, but on the outside, they look fairly okay. But for many neurodivergent kids or kids who are highly sensitive or developmentally delayed, it is harder for them to hide what's happening internally, right? So often case the behavior is front and center. So that's what we're going to see as ministry leaders, as parents, as caregivers. So what I like to do is to help parents and caregivers to sort of distinguish what's a challenging behavior from what is a child who's just having a hard time. We as adults have a hard time. So
Yeah, we do.
yeah, right. And we adults have meltdowns. But let's say you have a kid in your ministry, in your small group, who is melting down because somebody, took a toy that they wanted to play with, or perhaps the worship music is like in the area is way too loud for them. So that's definitely going to require a softer touch, right? Even if we're feeling a little bit frustrated or we're not quite sure, exactly how to respond, we know that things like validation, um, understanding just where they are emotionally, those things are really helpful. And also giving them some options for how can we, problem solve? What might be some solutions that are helpful? Now, if you have a child like my sweet Braden at 3 years old was swiping the table, throwing toys, scratching, if you have a child who is more aggressive, that's going to be different, right? In those cases, that's when we need immediate adult intervention to quickly ensure that child's safety, as well as the safety of everybody that's in that room. We never want to tolerate abusive language. I say that to the parents of my typically developing teenagers. I love teenagers, and there's certain things we're just not going to tolerate, right? Abusive language and physical violence should never be tolerated. But here's the rub. They still need support. They still need to be validated. We still need to understand what they are experiencing internally, but we need also immediate intervention.
What would immediate intervention look like? You've got a kid who you've identified as a potential risk to others in the
Mhm,
room and to themselves. Many
mhm,
leaders, the immediate intervention is call the parents.
mm.
What would you suggest?
I've been on the other side of that.
Yeah, yeah, you have.
Yeah, yeah, and I get it. I get it in that moment. You're in fight or flight. You have no idea how to respond. The immediate intervention, and this is in all cases, is pause. It takes just a few seconds to pause, take a deep breath, and separate that child from the object or the individual that's really in the way, and also protect yourself, right? I've been around behavioral analysts and behavioral strategists the entire life of my child, and what they say is safety is important. So you do need to step away, you need to lower your voice, you still need to provide support, but if you need to have like a big old pillow so that 4-year-old or 5-year-old or 10-year-old isn't harming you in between you and the child, then that's what you do. But it's not in a, oh my goodness, like, you're scaring me and this is a terrible situation and you're a naughty kid. It's a I care about you posture. I'm not going to let you hurt yourself or anyone else.
Yeah, if I'm a kid and someone is acting afraid of me and saying some of the things you just said, that's going to make my behavior escalate.
Yes, yes. And then the other piece of it that you mentioned earlier, I know we're not really getting into that right now, is you know the stats, Kim, and I don't even know them off the top of my head, like the latest ones, but so many families who have neurodivergent kids or kids with disabilities just don't go to church.
Right.
So if they are showing up and their kid is showing up in your room, and I know ministry leaders want to do everything they possibly can to serve the child well, you will serve the family well by not immediately calling the parent, right? And that parent's going to have, they're going to feel so much gratitude for the grace that you display. So when you end up having to call them, or they walk into the room to pick up your child, and or their child rather, and I'm thinking about me,
Yeah,
and,
right. Of
and
course you
then
are. Yes.
I've been there,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, you have.
And you say, Mom, gosh, we had a great overall day. There were a couple of bumps. I just want you to be aware of it, and this is how we handled it. Or there were a couple of things that we tried. It didn't seem to be as effective as we had hoped it would be, and that's why we had to call you, and we really hate it, and we are so excited to see Braden back next week.
Yes. So you said you've been there. Tell
Yes.
me about situations, if you don't mind talking specifically
Hmm.
about Braden, talk
Yeah.
about situations where the church got it right and where the church didn't get it right, because we can learn from both.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start early on because this is something that my church actually invited me to talk about openly, publicly. So very early on, probably right at 3, right before he had an official diagnosis. This is an example of where I wish the individual in the room would have handled it differently. So I'll put it that way. I'm not going to say that they got it wrong,
Right.
but this is how it affected me as a mother. Braden was in distress and he was acting out again, swiping tables. I think he was probably swiping at individuals. I blocked it out exactly what he was doing, but I
Right.
remember
Right.
exactly. I dissociated. That's a coping tool, by the
Yes.
way.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
is.
trauma response and sometimes a coping tool
Right.
for families and individuals who've gone through trauma. It doesn't even really matter, but he was disruptive and he again was 3 years old, and we go to a wonderful church. It's well resourced. I will sing its praises, but in this particular instance, I was fired up. I got called and to pick him up, came running, and I was told by a volunteer, so I do want to make that clear. Have you ever gotten him checked out for autism,
Oh, no. No.
Kim?
No.
It took all of my skills, and I'm actually very, so what is the beatitude? Blessed are those who are meek. They will
Oh, yeah.
inherit the kingdom of
Yeah.
the, right? Meek is like,
You weren't feeling too meek right then?
no. And I'm typically pretty gentle. So from my view, I gave him some words and very, very direct words about how that was so inappropriate. So inappropriate. And I actually asked him, are you a developmental pediatrician?
Right.
No. Are you a pediatric neurologist? And I wasn't being facetious. I really wanted to know.
Right.
And then I said, I'm sorry, that's so inappropriate. And then I turned to the leader who looked mortified. Thank you for letting me know. And I made a beeline to the family ministry director. And this part is kind of funny, not funny, but interesting. I wasn't able to talk to this individual immediately, but I got a call back on Monday and we had a conversation. And this is what she said to me. And she's still there. She said, "You were the nicest, angriest parent we've ever met." And I thought I had like really let him have it. And apparently word got back to her that I apparently composed myself okay. But she was just like, this is a true story. She said, "We want you to pray for our families. We can't imagine what you went through. That is definitely not okay." And this was later on. Can you pray for our families? Because apparently people complain all the time, but I wasn't as, ugly as I could have been.
Well, and I'll say even parents who may be described as, instead of the nicest, angriest person, they're just straight up angry. When a parent hears the same thing every time they pick up at a kid, at some point you're at the end of your fuse and you're like, does nobody have something positive
Yeah.
to say about my child? And I'm so sorry that, yeah, those checkout diagnoses are never a good thing. Never a good
It's
thing.
never a good thing. You don't know what the family's going through. You're not qualified, first of all. It actually adds more stigma. And he said it in a very, haphazard way, just sort of a throwaway comment. And it was in front of other people. So,
Yeah.
and my kids. So there was a lot wrong. Okay, now the trauma's coming back. I thought I'd worked through it.
I'm sorry. We need to...
That's okay. I've got good coping skills. But I can share with you that we're still, what is it, 11 years later, 10 years later, we're still there. And they always, no matter what happens, and it's been great lately, my husband is in the room volunteering in the special needs room.
Nice.
For the past 3 years, which is a blessing. He was with middle schoolers. I got to ask him which one's, more hectic.
So is Braden in a separate room, or what does his Sunday look like at church?
Yep, he is in a separate room with other kids who have some sort of developmental delay or disability. And it's usually about 5 or 6 kids in the room with about the same number of volunteers and leaders.
Hmm. There's lots of conversations about inclusion and separate classrooms and all that. So for a church who's listening, who going, so do I need a separate room? What should I do? What would you say to them?
Yeah, again, just that really boring answer. It depends, right? It depends. But this is an important question. Deciding on the placement of children who have disabilities in a church program is an important process. It should be handled really sensitively. And what I would say to leaders who are listening, you want to balance the needs and the benefits, right? So the
Yes.
benefits, I'll start with the benefits of inclusion. We know that there are many, and I won't go into all of the research around it. Um, but then we also know that there are benefits, but then there are also needs that kids have for really specialized support. And so you want to prioritize again the needs of the kid who probably would benefit from inclusion versus like what's going to benefit everyone. So focus on who that child is rather than having sort of a blanket, sweeping, policy. You can kind of have a general idea of what your values are. You should absolutely have that idea, but really use a person-centered approach. Who is that child? What are their strengths? What are their interests? What are their spiritual gifts, right? Instead of focusing on what we typically focus on, Kim, which is their limitations,
Right.
right?
Right.
When they act out, like, what are their triggers? Like, okay, that's fine and that's important, but let's start with who that child is. And then also, I would talk to ministry leaders about not working in silos, right? Collaborating with parents, collaborating with other professionals in the area. When you collaborate with parents, what you're able to do is to really come up with some sort of personalized plan that, again, is sort of focused and outlining the child's needs with the support that they need. Let me give you an example. I am so blessed to live in a community that has special needs services for teenagers. We know that many communities across the country, it's almost like the kids age out, right? After elementary or middle school, they get too big. There are not enough people who want to work with older kids. So we have something in our area called Camp Cool Teens. What I love about what they do, Braden has been doing it since he was in elementary school. It was called Camp Cool Kids. Every single summer, they send out an email with a worksheet, and we have to talk about who our kid is. And they do ask about Braden's strengths and his needs and what makes him happy, what brings him joy, what snacks does he like,
Yes.
and right, and
Right.
what type of YouTube videos. I go into
Right.
detail. They may have changed it because of me. They may or may not have. I go into detail. But one of the things they ask at the end is when your child becomes dysregulated, and I did include that word, what does he do and what does he need? And then they put an asterisk. This is what I've noticed recently. Please be honest,
Mm.
because we want to take the very best care of your child, but also care for our leaders and volunteers. And that struck me like, whoa, because we do, as parents, we have a tendency to sort of, be very glowing about their strengths and maybe minimize some of those areas that could be, that could pose a problem for people who aren't prepared. And that was really what the language was, so that we can feel prepared. And so I'm happy to say that he's had an amazing summer so far. So I think ministry leaders can adopt something similar as you're making this decision. Who is the child? What are their needs? What are their limitations? What are the supports that are required?
I absolutely agree. And you're talking about it depends on the kid. It also depends on the day. Some
Yes.
days they may need to be in a room with other kids with similar needs. Other days they might do absolutely great, or it might be, I mean, it just, yeah, there's so many variables. And I love how your church asked the positive questions, really got to know the kid. rather than just focus on the deficits. If you're loving today's conversation and want to dive even deeper into creating spaces where every child belongs, check out my book, Boundless Hope. It's packed with practical tools, real stories, and powerful insights to help you make a difference. Get yours today. Just head to kimbotto.com or Amazon to order now. In your book, another thing that I highlighted was neurodivergent kids are often extremely intelligent, if not gifted, and may already recognize that they're different from their neurotypical siblings and peers by the time they're 8. And I have noticed this in some, especially some of my teenage friends who are autistic, as they graduate and they see their friends go to college and they're not going. So how do we know that, oh, they are noticing a difference? And then how do we best support them so they do feel like they still belong, even though they're different from their peers?
Yeah, that's so good. So two things that I have been really, two words that I've been leaning on since Braden's diagnosis, and I encourage every single parent of a neurodivergent child to adopt this as part of their posture, is assume competence. Assume competence. So when you mentioned what I wrote in the book, they are very intelligent. They are very observant, even if they have zero expressive language. There's so much happening internally. So of course they're going to observe things in their environment that that lead them to believe that they are different in a way that may not be good, right? And they're clues that are usually observed. You mentioned teenagers, but even at a younger phase of development, they're usually observed when kids are in social situations with their typically developing peers, right? Those of you who are listening, if you are the parent of a child with special needs or who is neurodivergent, they may appear more shy in a group. But you know that you were just home or you were just in the car and they were totally like fine, and maybe even, maybe even talkative if you have a verbal child. They may seem more withdrawn than usual. So you may see, this is what we see in my child, in Braden, more stimming behaviors, right? So for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, stimming is short for stimulatory behavior, which refers to repetitive movements. For Bray, he likes to sway. Vocalizations is a form of stimming. And what's important to know about stimming is that is a way for a child, specifically an autistic child, to self-regulate, to emotionally regulate. So if you see more vocalizations, more swaying, or any of those similar behaviors, that may be a clue that there's something in their environment that they are observing, right? And we don't always know exactly what it is, but I typically see it when kids enter into social environments.
So how, for Braden, he's older now, what have people done to help him feel like he's part of the group?
Mhm.
And how have parents helped their children include Braden?
Yeah. So I always like to point out, and I've done this several times in my book, that a lot of what we observe in terms of how to tell that a child is emotionally dysregulated and also how to support a child, a lot of these things overlap, regardless if you are raising a child, right, who's typically developing
Yep.
versus a neurodivergent child. And I want to sort of share something that just happened yesterday. I have a 10-year-old who is typically developing. He's going to, I'll make the story really quick, Kim. He's going to like almost like a boot camp.
Oh.
Right. Whose idea was that, right? I'm like, okay, you need to move your body, but he wants to be a basketball player. It's called speed, agility, and strength training camp. So they're doing all sorts of intense things. And at first I would pick him up, he would not talk. And he's my talkative kid, by the way. He's very social. And I'm like, do you like it? He's like, it's okay. It's fine. Yesterday, so it's been 2 weeks. Yesterday, I go to pick him up. And as we're walking out the door, he says, Mom, did you see that thing that I did? And I go, I did, because I stayed the whole time. I'm like, I did. I see that you're improving. What do you think? He goes, uh-huh. And then he goes, hey, that's my coach over there. I want to give him a high five. And I go, oh, okay, that's cool. As we are walking by, he's never done this, by the way, as we're walking out the door by this particular coach, the coach goes, good job today, Noah. My kid lit up. My
Oh,
my kid lit up. And Kim, you and I know about just saying a child's name,
right.
right? Just how important and impactful that is. So I'm like bursting at the seams. I say nothing. We get into the car and I go, hey, bud, what was that like for you? He goes, what? I go, what happened just now? He goes, it was really cool. And I go, because he said your name, he was like, because I feel like he knew me and he liked me.
Oh, so
Right?
simple. Kids
So
want to be
simple.
known and liked.
That's it. That's it. They want to be known and liked and then celebrated. So when you asked me about Braden, um, I, at a very young age, was very intentional about speaking life into him. I was told by a couple of experts, and they were experts, but I always say God is the main expert,
Right. That's
okay?
right. That's right.
I, I was told by a couple of experts that he may not ever say, I love you. And I said, okay. And then I turned to my husband. I said, the devil is a lie.
That's right.
And my husband said something like, well, honey, we'll know he loves us. I don't really need that. And I go, I do.
Speak for yourself.
Speak for yourself, right? That's one of the things that I really, it was important to me selfishly. And I would put my hand to my heart and I would put his hand to his heart. And I would say to him, this is early on at 3 years old. I said, this is what love feels like. Do you feel that? Do you feel that? To this day, Kim, almost every single day, he'll say, Mommy, I love you. I love you, Mom. And not in a robotic way. Language is still a significant deficit for him, right? He has a lot in him, but doesn't always express a lot. But every single day, Mommy, I love you. I love you, Mommy. Sometimes unprompted. So what am I saying here? To support a child any child, but especially a child who may not feel like they belong, who may feel different, who may feel isolated, who feels different from their peers, start by explaining to them that God created each and every person individually. God created them like everyone else with the utmost care, right?
Right.
God knitted them when they were in their mother's wombs, just like a loving artist will create a beautiful masterpiece. I said to Braden, you are a masterpiece. You are God's masterpiece. And he created you with a unique purpose. So that's something that we would say to any child, right? But even if a child does not have a lot of language, you're not sure if, how much they're really, receiving. I speak to every parent, every leader, keep speaking life, reinforce that differences are not a mistake, right? But
Mm-hmm.
rather an intentional design by their Heavenly Father.
Yes. Yes. And you say that we speak those things over every kid, but I actually think the kids with differences, they get those words speaking over them so much less because so often we are so focused on the deficit or the gap.
Yes.
Chinwé, we all want our kids to be emotionally intelligent. How are some ways that we can increase their emotional intelligence?
Wow. I talk a lot about repair. So we know in any significant relationship, there are going to be ups and downs, right? Especially a parent-child relationship. You're going to have times where the child is hurting your feelings as much as they think that you're hurting their feelings. So part of the reason why I wrote Calm, Courageous, and Connected is to really give parents and caregivers a plan of action for when resilience hits the wall, when you aren't feeling very calm because your kid just pushed your button. So building emotional intelligence involves a lot of things, but you also want to remember that with every rupture, there's an opportunity to repair. And so when we model how to fix things with our kids, we're teaching them conflict management skills. We're teaching them problem solving skills. And really, most importantly, we're teaching them connection, which is so important.
So you talk about repair. Give me an example of what that looks like.
Yes. So If you and your child had a moment, they pushed your buttons, and maybe you did not respond in the moment because you're human in the way that you really would have wanted to. So, the three go to strategies for a lot of parents when we're sort of like we've reached the end of our rope is we get big, we get loud, we give up, right? And sometimes we give up not silently. We're like, I'm done, right? But then we walk away. Our frontal lobe is right back online, and we recognize that, gosh, we are the adult. They're still a kid. Their brain is still developing. So the onus really is on us to go back to our kid. Yes, they may have done something that they shouldn't have done. They may have broken a rule, or maybe what they weren't that kind to you. But as the adult, you can go to them and say, you know what? I didn't love the way that I handled something. I love you, and I do want to move forward. I want to make things better. And I know it sounds silly, maybe saying that to like a 5-year-old, but they're going to remember that and remember you're modeling how to problem solve, how to reconnect after a conflict.
We hear so much about what we should not say to a child. Give us some examples of phrases we should quit using and what we should say instead.
Absolutely. I'm going to start with the number one mental health condition in the world, which is anxiety. Now, the thing about anxiety is it doesn't always, present as, oh, I'm so worried, mom, I need your reassurance, right? If it did, then we'd all be in really good shape. Oftentimes, anxiety can be persistent. It can feel debilitating. The individual can feel out of control. They can even come off as angry or aggressive. So when we are trying to support someone, we want to avoid certain phrases such as just relax. Now, we may want them to relax, right? So that statement, while, well intended, perhaps, if it's not said sarcastically, really does serve to kind of minimize your child or the individual. This could be your spouse, this could be a colleague. It serves to minimize their experience and suggest that it's always going to be easy to get themselves, under control. So that's one. Another one that I would love for parents to retire or adults to retire in general is there's nothing to worry about. And I do hear this. I probably like you, Kim, consult with, ministry leaders, also in the corporate space. People say this because they do want you to feel better, right? But when you are saying that, what you're really doing is dismissing their concerns and their experience. Everybody's internal experience is going to be different. You aren't also sure about someone's past experience, which could be leading them to worry. So that's probably something that we want to avoid as well. You can ask about their internal experience because we really don't know what is behind the worry. Is it feelings of self-doubt, inadequacy? Are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they feeling lonely? And so when we are using sort of the, hey, don't worry about it, or just relax, we don't really get to know what's happening with our kids. So one of the questions that I might ask is, talk to me about what's driving that worry. And then hear what they say. And then, speaking of emotional resilience, which is what I've been talking about a lot lately, and building emotional intelligence, you offer tools, or you ask them what tool or strategy they've used in the past to address their worry in the past, right? So what's been helpful? And if they say, I can't think of anything, you can say, gosh, sometimes I will take a deep breath or go for a walk or take a drink of water. And those things help me when I feel worried.
Chenwei, I love the fact that you share so vulnerably about your journey as a mama to kids who aren't typical. So, as we start to wrap up here, what encouragement do you want to give to other parents who have a kid that doesn't fit into the typical mold? Which actually, I'm kind of like typical. The box of typical is getting smaller and smaller. But what would you like to say to them?
Yeah, so several things, but just to hone in on something that is also, I think, a strategy. Uh, Remember that positive reinforcement is way more effective than punishment for promoting any sort of, pro-social behavior, I'm using air quotes for those who can't see me, or long-term behavioral change, because it's fostering connection, which is all three of my books really are about connection. Um, you are fostering a positive, if you're in ministry, a positive learning environment. You are modeling the hands and feet of Christ as parents. You are really teaching kids that yes, there's some things that we don't want, that we want to shift, but progress is achievable. They matter, right? And that the pace at which each child achieves that progress will differ. But kind of going back to assuming competence, assuming that progress will happen, that's going to really connect your child to you if you're a leader, your student to you, to the mission, exactly what you're trying to teach about who God the Father is, who
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is. And then here's like the therapist in me, here's like the science part. If you lean more into positive reinforcement, even if everyone else is judging you, and
Right.
what family who's raising a neurodivergent child isn't used to judgment,
Right.
right?
Right. I wish
So
we could
you're
change that.
I wish we could change
Oh
that.
man.
The judgy eyes, the
Yeah.
statements about food and behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Some people are going to say you're being too gentle or permissive. You're not. There's a difference. This is not permissive parenting. It's really using positive reinforcement, and the science behind it really tells us that it reduces unwanted behavior. If you get really big and use punitive strategies and maybe yell, yeah, you're probably going to get a child to stop doing something in the moment. But
Right.
again, we're thinking about long-term behavioral
Exactly.
changes and connection. So positive reinforcement, attaboy, attagirl. Okay, you hear no, 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 don't, can't. Let me tell you what you can do. Let me give you some options. I love that you did this. Let's see more of that. How did that feel? So that's going to lead to longer, more sustainable behavioral change and connection.
Yes. And ignore what the gawkers are saying. Your audience is your kid. And that one of the things I underline in the book ties with this, where you say, this is a direct quote, taking a hard line approach
Mhm,
simply does not work with most kids.
mhm, mhm.
People, Chinwé is an expert. She's been doing this for a long time. So no matter what
Mhm.
eye rolls you're getting from other people, know that yelling and screaming just rarely helps. It just escalates. So we're gonna Chinwei, as you know, at the end, we end with just some rapid fire questions, which I know you'll be great at. So I'm gonna ask you a couple questions. What's your favorite family tradition?
Oh gosh, going out to eat, especially on an island.
Oh yeah.
With
So are there
with island hair, by the way.
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking earlier. I love your island. I love you, Chenwei, with island hair. That sounds super fun. Okay, what was your most memorable gift from your childhood?
Ooh, I talk about this quite a bit. My husband, are you familiar with the Nashville area?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Yes.
So Opryland Hotel.
Yes.
Okay, I was telling my husband this recently, but my father was a French professor, and he would have conferences all over the country. And I remember being 8 years old, and my dad said, "Well, you can take a Friday off and come to this conference with me. We'll leave Thursday night. Does that sound good to you?" And I was like, "Uh-huh." It ended up being one of the best experiences, just me and my dad hanging out. I was like in awe, this huge, beautiful building, but also just the people and just having that one-on-one time, those dinners with my dad, the breakfasts, that stays with me. And I actually really share with parents all the time, especially parents who have multiple kids. It's so important to like really carve out that one-on-one dates and getaways and weekends. And it doesn't have to be expensive. And yes, it can fold into your work because we're
Yes.
all busy. and
Yes.
and I remember that more than we went to Disney World. We were fortunate and blessed to be able to do, vacations from time to time. But that is a memory that sticks out because I was one of four. I remember I was really quiet. I didn't have a lot of words.
Right. Right.
But I had more words when it was just me and my dad.
I love that. Yeah, too often we make it way too complicated. You're getting ready to go do something? Take your kid along, one-on-one. That's a great idea. Let's see. If you could only eat one food, what would it be?
Shrimp
On the island.
on the
On
island.
a
And can I? Yes, yes, yes. And I know this is rapid fire, Kim, but you're taking me back to some really pleasant memories. Well, I'll just say this: shrimp with garlic and butter.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Hmm
you're my kind of girl. Yeah. Shrimp with garlic and butter sitting under a little hut on an island with the ocean feet away.
Oh my gosh, I
Doesn't that
love
sound
it.
good?
Yeah, island hair blowing in the
That's
wind.
right. That's right. That's right. Okay. I want you to finish this thought. Every child,
Needs one person who is crazy about them.
yes. I just watched Rita Pearson's TED Talk video, an educator, where she talks about every child needs a champion. Yeah.
Yeah,
So good. I
yeah.
love that. Yes, one person. And
hmm
we can be that one person. And we can be that one person
Yes.
to multiple kids.
Yes, yes, I love
Yes,
that. Yeah, it takes a village.
it
Yes.
does. So Chinwei, I know people are going to say, well, how do I get more of you? So how do they? How do they find out what you're doing?
Yeah. So if you are connected to social media, I'm most active on Instagram, and my handle is dr period Chinwé Williams, Chinwe Williams. And I also have a website that you can find resources, learn a little bit more about me and just some of the speaking that I do. And I also have a way to connect to my practices website and the books, and that is drchinwaywilliams.com.
Yes. And I will say your Instagram is short, bite-sized encouragement for those of us who don't have a long time to sit down and take in information. But I am going to say one more thing about your book, Calm, Courageous, and Connected. Not only is the content excellent, it's a beautiful book. I mean, it's color on the inside and it's very easy to read because of the way that it's organized. So well done on that.
Aw,
Really, really
Kim.
good. Yeah, I'm looking at this going, oh, this is so pretty. Um,
Parents are busy, caregivers are busy, leaders are busy. We wanted to kind of, put in some fun illustration. There's some sneakers in there. I think that's probably my favorite illustration. Did you see
yes,
that?
yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yeah, it's all, I loved it all. I thought it was all great. But Chenwei, thank you so much. I love the work you're doing. Thank you. Continue on. Know that you're making a difference in the life of so many people. And I really appreciate you spending time with me today.
Aw, thank you so much for having me. It's been a long time coming. This was so fun.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Every Child Belongs. If you found today's episode helpful, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to share this with a friend who might need to hear it. Together, we can create a world where every child belongs.